Welcome, I'm Paul, this platypus here is Dave. Today I have 14 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. I think my favorite story involves IKEA, and also a very scary one right at the end. Let's get to it. Case file number 3324, written by Owl of the Night 02. 4 earbuds, 1 reality. First, some context to rule out the obvious. I wasn't sleeping, drowsy, or under the influence of anything. I was 100% awake on my bus ride home. I was actively listening to some cool punk music. I could even tell you which songs I was listening to, and I was paying close attention because my stop was coming up. I use wireless earbuds, the kind with a charging case. I only own 1 pair. I have never owned a second pair. This is a crucial point and cannot be overlooked. As I approached my stop, I took the earbuds out of my ears and pulled the charging case from my bag to put them away. I opened the case and immediately froze in confusion. There was already a pair of earbuds inside. I looked down at my other hand, where I was definitely holding the pair I had just taken out of my ears. I was now holding 2 pairs of identical earbuds, 4 earbuds in total. My first thought was, my brain is being silly. I must have already put them away and forgotten. I got very confused, and I started to double and triple check. I looked back and forth between the pair in my hand and the pair in the case. They were both there, simultaneously. I reached into the case and physically touched the earbuds nestled inside. I closed the case and then opened it again. Yep, still there. I even picked one up. When I placed it back into the case, the tiny blue charging light lit up, just like it always does, and I heard the soft click of the earphones being placed into the case. So the case was definitely recognizing and charging a real, physical pair of earbuds. At this point, I had to make a decision. I had my original pair in one hand and a fully functional new pair in the occupied case. So, I zipped the case back into my bag. I saw the charging light even after I placed it in my bag, and stuffed the original pair into my pockets. I was so stunned I almost missed my stop. The weirdness wouldn't let me go. I stopped to get a sandwich, and while waiting, I had to check again. I was just so confused about how I could possibly have another pair of identical earphones. So I took the case out of my bag and opened it again. Now it was empty. The extra pair was gone, just like that. The case I had seen with my own eyes, containing a pair of earbuds that I had touched, that I had triggered the charging light over, was now utterly empty. All I had left was the original pair, still sitting in my pocket. I put them back in the case where they belonged, and that was that. Back to 1 pair. So I started thinking about what had happened, and tried to come up with an explanation. I can only find 2 plausible explanations. Either I was hallucinating in a way I never did before, or I just witnessed something impossible. I wasn't sleeping or stressed or under the influence. The moment I saw the duplicate, my eyes popped out and I got hyper-aware and very confused. I immediately thought, what the fuck is happening? I did check it multiple times. I saw it, felt it, heard it. So it was either some strange multi-sensory hallucination in a vivid and awake state, triggered by nothing, or something truly strange. I'm leaning towards the first explanation, but it feels deeply unsatisfying because nothing was off about my day, and I never had anything similar to that happen. So I think that we live in a simulation. This is of no surprise to anyone who watches this channel often. I believe it's the most rational explanation to explain everything that goes wrong with the simulation. I mean, I guess, in a sense, if God is real, and He created the universe, in a certain sense, it's still like a simulation. It's just it's a playground that was created, and although, if God created it, it probably wouldn't have any errors, right? So I think the fact there are glitches points more towards a simulation, rather than a perfect being creating it. And what's interesting about the simulation, again, tangent, I always do this, it's like a Chinese doll situation where it's an infinite regress, but upwards in this case, where you can always go to a different simulation. Who's to say how many layers of simulation there are? We could be dealing not with an infinite universe, but an infinite upgress, if if that even is a word, of simulations. And the thing about that is it can compound errors. So you get wonky errors like this, where you hold the earbuds in your hand, the duplicates, and then they disappear. It's like different layers of error correcting code finally trigger, but not before you can actually hold them. I think there are processing time delays, no matter if we're in the first simulation, if there's only one, or if there's a Googleplex of them above us. Whatever it may be, there are always going to be errors, and usually they're corrected pretty quickly before we can even, directly interact with them. But in this case, no. Imagine it happened with money, where you just had, $1,000 in your hand, you find in your backpack that you have another 1,000, so you go to spend it and then you realize, wait, the other 1,000 is missing now. If the universe is gonna mess up, you don't have to correct that error, just leave it. Case file number 3325, written by The Rocker. Whispers on the Black Lake. My family owns a small camp on a secluded lake in northern Maine. There are only 5 or 7 other cabins on this lake, 3 of which belong to my family. Very often, when my family and I go there, we are the only family on the lake. Our camp is small, with only 2 bedrooms, and at night, the entire area is consumed with an almost unnatural darkness. The place just feels like it's under some sort of dark veil. Most of the time, the night is consumed by complete and utter silence too, only broken by the occasional croaks of a bullfrog. There is a presence that I can feel, but I haven't seen anything yet. One morning, my mother and I heard a voice. It was calling my mother's name, but then it disappeared. The camp, neighboring ours, belonged to my second cousin, to whom my father was extremely close. This cousin passed away a few years ago. Every once in a while, you can smell cologne in the doorway, the same cologne this deceased cousin wore. People have passed by on boats and said that the shades to the camp were open, even though we always closed them upon our departure. The same cousin always left the shades open when he left his camp. One day, my great-uncle was fishing and wasn't having a whole lot of luck. He stepped into the camp and said, "God, Cliff, the dead cousin's name. How did you ever catch any fish in this lake?" Almost immediately after he said this, he noticed a fishing lure that he, nor any of our family recognized, lying on the table. He attached this fishing lure to his pole and almost instantly pulled a fish from the water. Another story comes from a camp about a mile up the road from ours. The people who own it are old family friends, although I myself have never met them. The inhabitants of this camp claim that on rainy days, they have seen a man in a yellow raincoat. Nobody knows who he is, but he often appears and then disappears in the blink of an eye. He is known as the man in the yellow slicker, and I dread the day that I see him. Case file number 3326, written by Secret Map 3026. North without turning. This happened to my friend and I a few years back in Washington State. I was driving back from my friend's dad's house with my friend and dog in the passenger seat. We were coming back from the Edmonds area, driving south to Seattle. I took this drive almost every day for work. We were for sure on the South Freeway, and I was looking at the signs waiting for our exit to come up. I remember clearly seeing the exit numbers and landmarks, the ones I always see driving southbound. It hit me out of nowhere that the exit sign numbers started going up. Instantly confused, I asked, "Wait, are we driving north?" We were suddenly way up north, past Edmonds. I asked my friend, and she said we definitely were driving south. The only way to go from southbound to northbound is to exit the freeway and get back on the other side. We had taken no exits and had been steadily driving straight. It's something I still think about to this day and get bewildered. I think there are wormholes that cause glitches. Had other instances of time lost driving up to Canada from Seattle as well, where we made the trip in very little time. I was with another friend on this occasion that also recognized the time loss. Well, you have the quack standard. I haven't used that saying in a long time, but it's just when you have a glitch that happens with a witness, in this case both times, space-time portals that always seem to intersect on roads or often seem to intersect upon roads. It's the simplest explanation, and unless there's aliens involved, which I like aliens, don't get me wrong. I love them to death. I love the concept to death. I don't know if I'd actually like meeting an alien directly, depending on the species perhaps. But yeah, unless it's aliens that are just abducting you with a car and then moving it to a different place, I could see that. But if we're talking about time intervals too, where you're in a place where you couldn't have possibly gone quickly enough, I think in those situations the best instance is just looking at your gas tank. If you remember where it was initially, if it's lower, then okay, you may have just blacked out or something messed with your brain, even if you have a witness. Maybe something both induced a blackout of some sort. Autopilot mode engaged. But no, if the tank is unchanged, then it's either aliens or a space-time portal. Can't think of anything else. Case file number 3327, written by Chapter Secret 33, Purple and Black. I wear glasses to drive or when at the cinema or a show. I don't even legally have to wear them, but I can see a little clearer. I have 2 cheap pairs, and because I'm useless, I usually only know where one pair is, but the other will turn up in a bag or a pocket. I went to a show on Tuesday with my sister-in-law, and I was telling her about my missing pair, black, and that I was using my other purple pair. I put that pair in my pocket. At the end of the night, I slipped them into the center console of my car. Next morning, I got a McDonald's breakfast for me and my son. I put my coffee in my cup holder. Today, I went out to my car and my black glasses were folded up in the cup holder that sits between the front chairs, my purple pair in the center console. I was totally flabbergasted. I had put my coffee cup in there the day before and also rooted through it for change. I contacted my sister-in-law and she also confirmed there were no glasses there. I checked with my husband and he was clueless as he had not been in my car. They were 100% not in the cup holder until this morning. So very, very strange. Case file number 3328, written by Doodlebug9361, When Felix Blinked First. When I was a kid, I had a really creepy doll, the size of a toddler, of Felix the cat. I was always confused and intrigued because I couldn't figure out if the doll was frowning happy or evil happy, because Felix doesn't have eyebrows. So it was like that thing was always staring at your soul. One day, I was sleeping in my bedroom, and a storm started. Because of the noises, I woke up. I had a support on my wall with toys when I was little, and for some reason I left the doll there before that night. So the doll was sitting there glancing at me with that morbid face. I don't know why. I started staring at it for a few seconds. I woke up like I was already staring at the doll. Probably because I was afraid of that thing turning alive and attacking me if I looked away. Kids logic. I was probably 7. So I was staring at that Satan spawn in the eyes when all of a sudden, a really tiny rock hit my eye. The size of a rice grain. Yes, a flucking rock, coming directly from the doll glance. I turned on the lights. It really was a rock, like the ones from the plant vases in the apartment. I searched on my bed and my hair on the room and nothing. No sign from where that thing came. I did not sleep more that night. To this day, I have that doll in my basement. I always feel a bad vibe whenever I find that creepy thing. So, plenty of stories of creepy dolls. This one being a cat, Felix the cat, is extra creepy. But the fact that you didn't throw him out after he literally, apparently, tossed a rock in your eyeball? Like, I'm done. You're gone, buddy. Would I try to sell it and inflict that horror on someone else? I mean, it's not a killer doll, so it's almost like a prank. Maybe I would. No one should buy anything from me. You'll never know if it's mildly cursed. Case file number 3329, written by Afro Powers Activate. Eyes like dim lanterns. A few nights after moving into my new apartment, first place moving out of home, I remember everything being dark with a low light filtering through the window. We were on the 3rd story. I woke up and couldn't breathe. This wasn't new for me as I have always had sleep paralysis. I don't even get scared of that now and just wait until I can breathe again. But this night, there was a huge weight on my hips. I look down and see nothing but black, where I should have seen a window a few meters away. As my eyes adjust, I make the outline of a man straddling me, all shadowy, with dim white eyes, but his head had huge ram horns. Whenever I get sleep paralysis, I'm able to make a whine in my throat, loud enough for my boyfriend to wake me. I start to try, but the shadow figure places one hand over my throat and silences me, and the other on my wrist to stop me tapping my boyfriend with what little movement I had. I used all my strength into my other hand and scraped on the wall trying to alert my housemates, but they were asleep and couldn't hear. The man leaned right down and his horn scraped the wood of my bed. I felt his breath on my neck as he chuckled and said, "You won't make it out." He then stopped holding me down, stood, and walked into the corner of my room that is covered by shadows. This ordeal went for around 2 or 3 minutes. I was finally able to take a breath and started shrieking. Somehow, my pajama shirt had unbuttoned 3 buttons as well. My partner woke and took care of me, but I wouldn't sleep there for over a week. When I finally returned, I would get the feeling of hands on my throat and wrist again, hear breathing or see shadows of the man with horns walk by the windows at night. But I lived on the 3rd story of an apartment block. Oh, and the scrape on my bed headboard? Still there in the wood. Needless to say, I broke the lease and noped my way back to my parents' house. Case file number 3330, written by XJD Drag X. Every door, every window, all at once. A little backstory before I start. My dad is a bit too trusting, especially of me, his eldest son. So I've been staying home alone overnight since I was about 13 years old. We live in a very, very old house, a double, and the couple on the other side are very old. Ever since this incident, I've begun to believe that they are dead. The first time I ever stayed home alone throughout the night was normal, during the night. It was during the day that got me. My dad had gone to a concert with his buddy and didn't want to drink and drive, so he trusted me to not be stupid. Coming home from a friend's house, I noticed all the doors and windows were open in my house. It was the middle of a summer day, so I just assumed that my dad had yet to leave. I ran up my front porch and said hello to my neighbors, who are generally very friendly. Instead of replying or even acknowledging me for that matter, they both just stared past me. They were old. I just blew it off. I ran back to see if my dad's truck was in the garage, and it wasn't. So I was a little weirded out. He isn't one to forget to close the door, lock the windows, and so on. Hesitantly, I went inside to find every window wide open, every single door open, all of the cabinet doors open, the refrigerator door open, and the TV on, full volume, static only. I went outside to see if my neighbors knew anything about it, and again they just stared right at me, like they were seeing something else. Old, weird people creeped me out. Called my dad and he had no idea what could have caused it. Kind of just suppressed the memory of it until now. Case file number 3331, written by Toss It Without the Wash. Rain, darkness, and a ringtone. I was riding my bike home from a late shift at work. It was around 10 p.m., pitch black, pouring rain, and I was on a windy bike trail that had a few drop-offs, sharp turns and the works. I didn't have a light on my bike, but the trail was lit up with lights. I would compare them to streetlights. So I was speeding along, and through one section, due to the heavy rain, a section of the lights were out, but I wasn't worried. I was a punk kid who thought she was invincible. That didn't slow me down. So my cell phone rings, which I hear only because it's in the pocket on the shoulder strap of my backpack. If I had thrown it in the back like usual, I never would have heard it. I stop, answer my phone, thinking it's probably my mom, worried about me riding home in the rain. About a 45-minute ride in good weather. Here's the thing, no one was there, no one on the other line, and I didn't recognize the number. Strange, but whatever. So I hop back on, barely start pedaling, and not more than 3 feet in front of me, sharp turn in a trail, no guardrail, steep drop I would have gone flying over. I'm convinced that if I didn't get a call or stop to answer my phone, I would have been toast. Here's the kicker, I get home, curious as hell as to who called. I phoned back the number on the caller ID, and for no foreseeable reason, on the other end of the line, none other than our friendly neighborhood IKEA. Thank you, IKEA, for most likely saving my life, and for your awesome and expensive prefab furniture, of course. Yeah, I love IKEA, and I never have any issues assembling it. Maybe just because I read the instructions. I think a lot of people try to wing it, and it never works out, does it? There's either always 20 pieces left over, or 10 missing pieces but yet it's still assembled. So he's like, are they just extra pieces, or what? I don't know. This is the first instance that, actually no. I think IKEA was involved in another glitch. I don't know if it was involved in saving a life, but I definitely distinctly recall IKEA involved in a different glitch. I'd have to search that up to find which one it was, but yeah. Okay, so IKEA involved in 1 or 2 glitches. Pretty interesting there. Saving a life though, next level. What I actually think happened is your guardian angel, maybe we have more than one. Maybe they're not assigned to just one person. Maybe they rotate like a shift. Anyways, some being or consciousness protecting you, overseeing you, because you're not supposed to leave this universe via quantum immortality, which is another tangent. Focus. Guardian angel possessed the worker at IKEA, who called your phone just in time, and then they probably don't even remember calling anyone. That's my best guess. Yeah. Temporary possession, call, leave the body. They have no idea what happened. They have no idea that through them, a life was saved. Pretty cool. Case file number 3332, written by Anonymous. Echoes from the Black Door. After school had ended, my friends Haley and Chloe and I went to the basement of one of our school buildings to go to the photo room because Chloe had to develop pictures for class. To get there, you had to go down a flight of steps, follow a hallway that led to another, go down that one, and then you came to this bizarre door. The door is like a revolving door, except everything that is not the opening is just black, as it is not glass. You go in and turn around, and then you're in the dark room. Obviously, this is because you can't have light in the dark room. So, we go into there and play music and goof off while we're developing. When we finish developing, we have to bring the photos to the photo class room. As soon as we get out of the loud photo room, we emerge into the empty hallway. As soon as we start walking, we hear this weird machinery-sounding noise coming from further in the basement. It wasn't like a boiler-sounding noise, it was just weird. We get into the photo room and are joking around when Haley screams and sprints away. We asked her what was wrong, and she said she heard whispering right in her ear. Keep in mind that we're the only ones in this building. So Chloe and I stay quiet to listen, and not a minute later, we hear the weirdest voice I've ever heard. It came from further down the hall, where the developing room was that we just were. There was no possible way anyone could have gotten there, as we essentially were blocking the opening to upstairs. It was a man's voice for sure, but it had weird aftertones. It didn't say anything understandable, but we booked it. Chloe peed her pants running up the stone steps, and the stains are still there today. Case file number 3333, written by Nene55. Back at the vet again. This is my first glitch. I turned right out of the vet's office, you can only turn right or left, and kept wondering where my exit was. In the country, so no real landmarks, and I thought somehow I missed my exit. I have driven to this vet for years and absolutely know I turned right. I turned on my maps to see how I could cut back to get to my exit. I was so confused because I could not fathom how I missed my exit. Maps indicated that my exit was 9.5 miles ahead of me, rather than the 2 to 3 miles it typically is. I am still struggling to compute this, but keep moving towards my exit, and suddenly, I'm passing my vet's office on my right. To do this, I would have had to mistakenly turn left, go 7 to 8 miles, make a U-turn, and come back to be on the correct side of the road, and going in the correct direction. I did not turn left in error. I did not make a U-turn ever. I did not ever exit off the road I was on. I had no idea how this happened, and I was really shaken. This is just impossible. Case file number 3334, written by Grizzly Barrow. Basement of the Uninvited. It happened to my dad when he was a teenager in rural Minnesota in the 1980s. He was part of a peer meditation group that had been largely protested by the community, as in town hall meetings where people would yell about the group doing drugs and having sex. Untrue. In short, everything was pretty charged and hysterical. So my dad and two of the girls were together after one of said town hall meetings, strategizing how to get these crazies to leave them alone. My dad zoned out for a minute and was looking around the room, which I believe was the basement of a church where the meeting was held. He was looking at one of the windows briefly, only to see a dark shadow enter the room and creep along the floor. It then moved back up the wall and out of another window. He suddenly realizes one of the girls is hysterically crying and screaming, "Why would you say that to me?" over and over. Apparently, he had gone all stiff, looked at the girl and said, "I am God," in an uncharacteristically deep version of his voice. The other girl, while not freaking out, still corroborated what they saw, saying my dad's eyes changed. Not like changed colors or anything, but that they became darker, and she felt certain something other than my dad, something evil, was looking out of him at her. To this day, he recalls the story with dead seriousness, and he is not a religious man. He does believe in ghosts and whatnot, probably because he has crap like this happen to him. I should also mention he was voted friendliest in his class, and would never ever prank someone like this. Case file number 3335, written by Spinge Bull. Rhythm Behind the Curtain. So, it was the year 2007, or maybe it was 2008. Regardless, it was a long time ago, and I needed new clothes. So my mom and I decided on a very gloomy and overcast day to take a trip to the newly opened Chinese store to buy some new clothes for me, where they would probably be cheaper. So we start strolling around this large department store filled with cheap merchandise of dubious origin, while picking up articles of clothing that might interest me. We found a couple neat pairs of trousers and a couple shirts, so my mom tells me to go change and that she'll be with me right away. So I step inside the small, dimly lit changing room, and I start taking off the pair of trousers that already belonged to me to then put on the new one that we had just picked up. I'm about halfway done putting on the new trousers, they're still around my thighs, when all of a sudden, clack, 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 the changing room curtain that separated me from the rest of the store starts moving. 3 violent, jerky, and yet very rhythmic motions, as though someone had been pulling it in a very specific way. I perked up, a little scared, thinking I had just fallen victim to a pervert of some kind. Not to mention the sudden noise startled the hell out of me. But even before the curtains were completely out of the way, before the last violent pull, who do I see? My mom, standing there, with her arms folded. She wasn't even touching the curtain, and yet somehow it was moving. I was dumbfounded. I peeked my head out of the small booth to see if someone else had been pulling at the curtain, or maybe if it got caught into something and that's why it was moving so strangely. Nothing. At my left, the direction from where it was supposedly being pulled, was a man who was busy helping his son out with something and wasn't even looking in my direction. Besides, if he had tried to open the curtain to have an unsolicited look at me, don't you think that my mom would have something to say about it? Instead, she was just standing there, arms crossed and staring into my soul. Before I could even say anything, she took a quick step forward. "Alright, let's have a look at those trousers." At first, I didn't even get a chance to mention the strange occurrence to her. But by the time we had gotten back in the car, I asked her, "Back when I was in the changing room, the curtain started moving suddenly, and in a very weird way, and when it moved I saw you standing there, and you weren't even touching it. How do you do that?" And my mom responded as she always does when something incredibly odd occurs that involves her. She responded just like she'd responded years later when my stepdad somehow grew a second voice. "You guessed it." "What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about." And that's a second, very strange event that occurred in my life that, to this day, I still cannot for the life of me explain. The strangest thing is that in both instances, my mom was involved, so maybe that's my first clue. Case file number 3336, written by I See What You Did There, 1. The Greys in the Bedroom. One Sunday morning, my husband and I were asleep in our upstairs bedroom, not in the house we currently live in. I woke up and just laid there, still not energetic enough to hop out of bed and start the day, when I heard a loud sound come from downstairs, like someone was running from one end of the house to the other. I shot straight up in bed and shook my husband, telling him I heard someone or something running in the house. He mumbled, unconcerned, that he had heard it too. and that it was just the dogs. I looked next to me, and our 2 dogs were sleeping on the floor right next to my side of the bed. I shook him again and said, "It wasn't the dogs, they're right here." He shot up so fast and bolted downstairs to see what the hell was happening. I followed after him and we checked all the doors. They were still dead-bolted, as well as all the windows, and went into the basement to check everything as well. Still no idea to this day what the heck it was, but we had both heard it. Another one, but this was my best friend's story. When I was around 11 or 12, I lived in the city with my mom and would come out every weekend to visit my dad and grandparents, and would see my best friend as well. One time during the spring, she told me that she had started to go see a therapist or a psychologist of some sort, but wouldn't really get into the details, and I didn't push her for more information. A few weekends later, while she was at her piano lessons, her mom stopped in to visit my grandma and explain what my friend was going through. She said she had started taking her to have therapy sessions because she was having terrible night terrors and sleep paralysis and was having a difficult time with it all. What she had been seeing at night were little gray aliens in her room, and then on the other nights she would see her dad, who had passed away from cancer when she was 5, sitting in a rocking chair she had beside her bed, and he would tell her that he was watching over her and she was safe. During the summer, my friend all of a sudden stopped going to therapy sessions. One night when she was sleeping over at my house, I asked her if she wanted to talk about it and if the therapy had helped her with it. She said that her mom had pulled her out of therapy. I asked her why, and she said that one morning, after she had one of the night terrors, she woke up and her mouth was quite sore, so she went and got her mom and asked her to check her mouth, and her mom found a bunch of tiny stitches in her gums and a cut inside her mouth. No idea on the source. Was it from her dreams? Case file number 3337, written by Cal Zen. A wake-up call from hell. I was out camping with a friend of mine in rural Canada, way out in the boonies. In between 2 hills is a small campground, and since it was off-season, we thought it would be nice and quiet, a great weekend. We were lucky, as the whole place was deserted. The weather was changing a bit, but it seemed alright. It was pretty windy that night, and inside the tent I woke up a couple times and thought I could hear someone walking around the area, but there were a ton of leaves and it was quite noisy. I just thought it must be the wind and leaves. So, come morning time, we wake up. I asked my friend if she slept well, and she says not so good. It was really noisy with the wind, and she thought there was someone walking around. Damn wind playing tricks. But I noticed a spot on the tent. There is this red and black dot on the tent. It's red liquid. Another drop falls down, and I look up and realize this liquid on the tent is from a fucking goat's leg about 20 feet above us, nailed into the tree. Very fresh, still dripping all over the tent. Freaked out? You fucking betcha. Totally fucking freaked out. She starts screaming and starts twisting around like something or someone is going to pop out of the forest, like a bad movie. I am moving like I just popped 32 tabs of speed after drinking 13 espressos, getting the tent down, literally throwing everything into the car. Fluck packing, fluck the food, leave the food. Grab the bags, get my crap, heave ho into the back of the car. Where's my knife? Put that flucker in your pocket. I've seen the movies. Cooler? That fits right on top of the pile of crap in the car. In 22.5 seconds, that car was packed. There she is in the car already. Her eyes are like 2 big moons. I remember that. And she locked the doors. You see that in the movies, and it all came back. Open the fucking door! And she reaches over and pops the door. I jump in and my heart is going 1,000,000 miles an hour. I started the car, put her in the car, and we were gone. I probably cleared the front gate of the area at 75 miles an hour, and I have found out I can drive like bloody Dukes of Hazzard given the right circumstances. I think it was about an hour down the road I finally let myself breathe again. Never went back, never will. Years later, I am then in my 30s, a friend of ours told us that she used to work at a youth jail, and there was these kids from a rural area, close to where we camped that night, who said the town they came from was totally satanic. Well, not really satanic, she said, but they worshipped like old gods and had human sacrifices and so on. Kids, she said, such stories. The hair on the back of my neck took a long time to come down. You know, I've read a lot of stories, like, I'm saying something new here, but never one that was involving a satanic ritual of sorts. What was the intent here? Okay, let's assume they're religious fanatics or something. They worship the old gods, and pinning a goat leg on a tree was somehow involved in the ritual. Were they intending on anything more? Were you just supposed to see it and be scared? Or were you going to be featured in their next sacrifice? I don't know, but I mean, I understand why you were freaked out, and I would have reacted exactly the same way. So, yeah, no shame in that. Get the hell out of Dodge. It's not like you're in a horror movie where you see this crazy thing happen and like, okay, let's go investigate. Let's find these bad guys. Like, no, you're not the hero. And I mean, you don't even want to be. Just leave, survive. That's the heroic thing to do. Now time for the jokes of the day. While preparing Thanksgiving dinner, my wife said, "Babe, I'm exhausted. Can you roast a turkey?" I'm like, "Sure." Then I turned to the turkey and said, "Listen here, you 18-pound diva carcass. You took 4 days to thaw, and your head was so far up your own butt, you were practically sucking your own wishbone." Nice roast. Did you know that Jesus was originally named Gary? But then Mary stubbed her toe. Chuck Norris just got shot. The bullet is in critical condition. Yep. Can never go wrong with a Chuck Norris joke. Imagine the absolute fame and notoriety that Chuck Norris has, just as a person. He's the most famous, mythical person ever in history. I think even rivaling Bruce Lee beyond it. Bruce Lee's just cool, but he doesn't get jokes made of him, like he beats the universe with one punch. Don't get me wrong, he's a legend, but something about Chuck Norris just transcends that into meme territory. My wife said an onion is the only vegetable that makes you cry. So I threw a turnip at her head to prove her wrong. That'll do it. Went to visit my friend in the hospital, and kept getting mildly insulted by everyone I passed. Doctors, nurses, patients, everyone. Turns out I was in the burn unit. I mean, you got roast today, burns, you just can't escape it. Video up here, YouTube thinks you'll like it, check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you next time.